Alright, so now that the socket here is completed inside the body of the robot, we'll look at adding on some hinges here, or some brackets that would hold in the eyelids and the eye itself, or the camera, whichever you want to call it. But as we continue, I'd like to take one quick look here at the back on the inside of the sphere that's here. And this is something we're going to see relatively frequently throughout the model, so it's worth mentioning here where it's obvious, and then we'll also look at this later. Now, because this sphere ends at a pole back here, we get these triangular polygons, and those three-sided polygons can cause some issues with subdivision, with just general smoothness. And back here, these ones in the back aren't really going to be seen, but as a general rule of thumb, what we're going to do is create quads inside of here, and this will help not only to smooth the subdivision. If we look, if I get the there, you can see the ripples in the specular highlight. Not only will they smooth that out here, if I delete those, so we get a much smoother highlight, but that will also help as we increase the subdivision. So if I, for example, go and press Shift D to get up my subdivide polygons, and I use a Catmull-Clark subdivision here, and click OK, can see that that is subdividing much more nicely. It's actually giving us essentially a quad ball kind of closing of the geometry. So I'm going to undo that because I don't want to subdivide this physically. So what we're going to do is move on and grab this eye master here, and we'll use this to create the brackets for the eyelids themselves, and the eye itself. So we want all three of those pieces to interlock very nicely and also work very nicely along with the bracketing that's already been made. Now, one thing to note is we won't be attaching the brackets directly onto the existing model here, just for lack of resources edgewise. Now, if you wanted to actually have the brackets attach seamlessly onto here, there would need to be significantly more polygons. You would need at least double the polygons running around the radius here in order to get this so that it wouldn't block out the eye entirely. We just want these to be relatively small brackets, so we don't want them to go all the way up to there. And even if we inset them into here, it's going to cause some very strange issues with the flow of the polygons. So we're going to look at polygons that fit in, or brackets that fit in, but are not seamlessly attached. Kind of a little bit of a layered look here. So let's go ahead here to the eye master, and I'm going to take let's take this master layer, and I'm going to increase the subdivision to we'll go to level 3 at least, so we can see a little bit better here. And I'm going to go ahead and duplicate that. And then let's hide one of these. And on this one, we'll rename this bracket. Okay. And I'm going to get everything into place before actually starting to delete polygons and create the brackets themselves. That will allow us to have the pieces that we need after the brackets are done, so that we don't have to go and redo steps just in order to get back where we were. Now, one thing you may notice here is I delete these, we lose some pull towards this this endpoint. You can see this endpoint here. When I delete these, it pulls back a little bit. So we will need to make a slight correction here. So I'm going to go ahead and get the eye master back on, and I'm going to set my action center to parent, and then we'll go ahead and select the vertices at front and back of this. Run the scale tool. There we go. And I'm just going to scale those out just a little bit so that we retain our nice round shape at the end. It's a good idea to also do that while you still have kind of a guide layer in place. So now I can go ahead and hide that master again. You can see that's a much better subdivision. All right, so next thing that I'm going to do is take this and rotate it 90 degrees. We can actually bring our body back in here. So let's rotate this 90 degrees. There we go. And we're going to scale this inwards to 95%, which was what the original interior was scaled at. That actually looks like it's pulling a little bit, so I'm going to scale that back out just a hair. There we go. So we'll go to 96%. So that we see this is meeting up but not quite overlapping, or shouldn't quite be overlapping. Actually, it looks like we need 95.5. So we'll go ahead and adjust that. There we go. All right, and again, there's a little bit of an issue here with these endpoints. So I'm going to go ahead and make that adjustment once again here. And this time I'm just going to do it with the Move tool and Symmetry. And I'll just set my action center to Selection. And pull that out. I need to pan out a little bit and make sure that that's not affecting the area surrounding it. And it's not. We want to make sure that we can still see that little bit of a rounded edge there. And that works nicely. And now I'm going to go ahead and subdivide this one level. So I'm going to go ahead and use the Catmull-Clark subdivision and click OK. And sometimes you'll see a little bit of a pull based on these quadrangle ends, these quad ball kind of ends of spheres. So it's important to go in and kind of check your geometry. It looks okay. So this level will be high enough to create the eyelids. For the most part. We might need to go one level higher, but we want to reserve going a level higher when we know we need it. So instead of going a level higher and then deciding that it's too much, I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this first, rename the second one eyelid, okay, and then we'll hide that again. And we'll go back to this one that's the bracket. Now the bracket is definitely going to need one more subdivision. So let's go ahead and subdivide that again. And the reason for that is if I'm going to go ahead and select this poly loop right here, and then shift and the close bracket key to select what's inside there, this is going to be what will act as the actual bracket. So if we don't have enough polygons here, this isn't going to follow the curve right, and we'll have some problems with that. So with this many polys, we shouldn't have any difficulties having this follow a nice curve. There's plenty of polys to do so, and it will give us a nice clean look. So I'm going to go ahead and invert the selection with the open bracket key, and then cut that stuff out. And then I'm just going to flip these polygons so that they're facing inwards. So this now is actually close to what we will need for the eyelid. The only problem is that I want to have a little bit of an overlap where the rim here that we have pre-existing overlaps a little bit, and this kind of sits nicely inside the rounded edges. So we'll go ahead and scale this just a little bit here. And it looks like that's even a little bit too far. So I'm just going to take the whole thing to 100.2, and something like that looks about right. Now, you may notice that there is still a little bit of kind of cross-hatching overlay going on here where you can see polygons here. Now, you always be able to select these because the housing of the eye is in another layer. But if you see these polygonal facets popping through here, first thing to do is to go check in a non-wireframe mode and see if you can still see them. And yes, I can see them right here kind of popping out. So I don't want to have that. Fortunately, this is a very easy fix. In this case, we can just go grab the single edge right in the middle, make sure I've got it on both sides, and use the Move tool and change my action center back to Selection, and then I'm just going to tuck that in until it goes away. And actually it looks like it's a little bit more than an edge, so let's go ahead and grab those two polygons. Oh yeah, there we go, and pull those in. And then deselect those, and you should see that specular highlight go smoothly across there. Now, when we go back to the model view, you still may see those, especially when you're zoomed out, and that's just because the edges have some, or excuse me, the polylines have some thickness to them here in the viewport. But as you get in closer, that thickness should become more and more negligible, and those should essentially disappear. But again, that's just going to be a screen artifact. If you click over to here, you'll see that indeed we have that working just nicely. So I'm going to go ahead and take these and copy them and scale them. And let's take this back to our parent action center, and we'll just scale that out. And again, we're looking for, actually before we scale, let's go ahead and flip them. We'll make it easier to read. Scale, and pull those back out. We're looking for that little bit of a lip going on, which looks like we've got that all the way around. let's deselect and check that. And again, it's a good idea to hop over to an unwireframe mode and even use RayGL. I just have simple global illumination turned on and all the lights turned off, so I can get a nice read on this. And I can see, yeah, that's really nice. Just creates the nice effect of a seam without having, oops, looks like I forgot to copy. So we'll back up here. So let's undo. So I'm going to copy, flip, scale, and then we'll scale that back out again. There we go. And now we'll paste to get back the interior that we had. All right, so again, let's hop back over here, check our shaded view, and then also check our RayGL just to make sure that everything is on the level here. That looks good. That interior looks good. So we're good to go. Let's go ahead and attach these two sides together. So double click on the inside and the outside, hold Control and click on edges to get the boundary, and then we'll go ahead and bridge those. And while we're here, let's go ahead and set the subdivision weight. Helps if you have it selected in the list view. There we go. Select subdivision. I'm going to set it that still to 30%. Right now we're only at a subdivision level of 2, so it's going to come out as completely sharp. But if we go back to our mesh properties, we can take that up to level 4, and we should have nice matching rounded edges compared to what was already there. Looks very nice. Good fit. Now you can take this same idea here and continue with it. You could create a little bit more complex piece by bridging in some simple cylinders. So for example, you could do something like this, where I add on just some cylinders that attach in, and then on the inside, same kind of thing, a little bit of a cylinder. This actually I decided to not use, did this for a test, but decided not to use because really this is probably never going to be visible. You know, if it is, I would be very surprised. If the eyelids are open all the way, you may see a tiny glimpse of it, but the most likely thing is with the shading in there, you'll never see that. So instead of add the extra geometry weight on there, this time I just went with a nice simpler bracket that still conveys the idea. Could add in that cylinder if I wanted on the outside, but don't really need it for now. So let's go ahead and bring the eyelid back here. Or the eyelid piece, and we can check that again. Good idea to check with your RayGL, see how everything fits. And this looks like I've got a really nice fitting here. Really close, believably open amount of space here, where just the rounded edge dumps right off into there. And if we subdivide this again to level 4 like the other one, will look even better. There we go. Yep, so this is working pretty well. I'm actually going to back it off to 3 here while we model those. Let's turn off RayGL and head back in here. So the question here is going to be, can a hemisphere or half of a sphere here maintain a good shape with this level of subdivision? So let's go ahead and hide everything except for this for now. I'm going to our quad view, and I'm just going to select all of this, and what we want to do is keep an eye on this lower edge here as I delete the top. And it looks like it pulls out relatively significantly. So I'm going to go ahead and subdivide this one level more. And then I can actually just keep this at a lower subdivision level and it'll still work well. So now let's go in here and see. This should be a much closer, yeah, that's much closer. And when we create some thickness to this, that will work very well too. So this is going to be part of the eyelid here. It's going to be the bottom part. Let's go ahead and select the entire thing. And for the moment, I'm actually going to pull it down to a subdivision level of 2 just to keep the weight down and make it a little bit easier to model with. And I'm going to go ahead and thicken this. Let's go ahead and thicken. I'm going to move that in. I think I'll go in about 10 millimeters. Don't want this to be too thick here. Alrighty. And now I'm just going to select the edges inside and out. And I should still have that same subdivision weight selected, so I can go ahead and just use the weight tool and click, and that will drop in my subdivision weight that I had. Now let's go ahead and back up to level 4 here and have a look at that. Alright, so that's looking very nice and clean. I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this. Actually, before we do so, let's go ahead and rename it. Call this eyelid bottom. And I'm going to duplicate it. And we'll rename the duplicate eyelid top. And then I'm going to go to my polygon mode, use my rotate tool, make sure that I am on parent for my action center, which I am. And we'll just go ahead and rotate that around 180 degrees. And there we go. There are the eyelids. Okay. So the nice thing about this is that from this geometry, we don't have to go and create another sphere. I could have scaled in a sphere and saved it, and then, but I don't want to do that because I want to have a couple of things happen. I want to have the interior, the eyeball, actually match exactly, and at the same time, I don't want to have to go in and really fine-tune scale that. So here's what we're going to do with this to be able to get that. Let's go ahead and hide one of those layers, and I'm just going to select all of the polygons around here. So let's get the loop. Doesn't want to give me the entire closed bracket there. There we go. So shift in the up arrow then until you get there. So that was again just shift in the close bracket key to close off the selection. And now I've got this here. So let's go ahead and take this and copy it. And actually here, yeah, we'll go ahead and do that. We'll copy that, and then I'm going to duplicate the layer. I'm going to paste this in, and I'm just going to select all that extra stuff that was in there and delete it. And then let's hide the other part. So there we've got the entire eye there. And on this one, I am going to definitely step down a subdivision level because we're not going to have any specific rounding on it. So let's just take this top part, copy, paste, rotate. We'll go around 180 degrees. All right. And then I'm just going to select everything and use the merge tool. And click, and you should see that center part disappear there. Let's go ahead and hide everything else that we've got just to make sure that's working. It looks like we didn't get some areas merging here. There's a little bit off, so I'm just going to drag up my distance just a little bit, and we should see everything disappear around the middle and show a nice clean line. So then we'll go ahead and flip that the other way, and you should have a nice clean seam here. Oops, except yeah, this is carrying the weight that that it inherited from where it was copied. So let's go ahead to weight map and pull that down to 0. And there we go. So last stage here is just to rotate this. Wow, turn off symmetry first. Rotate this around so that the eye part is facing forward, or the round part that's going to be where the camera lens is. And we'll rename this one eye. And then let's bring all of these pieces back together. The bracket, the top and bottom, and the body itself. Go back to our mesh view here. There we can see we have everything nicely interlocking. And we can turn on RayGL. See, that's working pretty well. And then the last thing that I'm going to do, we won't set up a rig for this quite yet, but just so we can see what's going on, I'm going to go ahead to polygons here. Actually, here we'll do it in item mode. I'm going to use the rotate tool on this eyelid. Actually, before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and save this. 3. I have auto save on, but you know, hey. Let's go ahead and save that. Oops. Turn off RayGL for the moment, and we'll just rotate this one up a little bit and this one down a little bit. And when we set up the rig, this will be set up to where these are very easy to grab, and we can do a blink motion, or we can move the individual eyelids up and down, or the eyelids together up and down. So there we go. So there it is, open a bit. And again, let's turn on our RayGL. And you can see what I was talking about in here with that little bracket. You know, we might have gotten a little tiny glint of something in there, but in my view, it's not worth the extra polygons spent on that. I'd rather make the camera on here look better, have nice a nice amount of polygons. And there we go. So we've got the eye bracket all ready to go. Actually, I could bring in that bolted one so you can see it here. Let's turn off this bracket. There you go. So you can see those did come in a little bit smaller the way I modeled them. And yeah, the amount that you can see in there, probably not worth it. So, but this exterior part might be something that you want. So again, just a simple cylinder merged onto there, and you're ready to go. So there we go. Eyes are done. Come back in the next video. We'll work on the camera, and then we'll move on to the actual iris and everything inside of the camera. Thanks, and see you in the next video.